Would it make you the jerk if you refused to drive any coworkers home without getting paid for it? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for telling my wife she's a poor communicator? My wife and I have different approaches when it comes to addressing issues with our 16-year-old daughter, Isabella. My approach is to treat the situation, whatever it may be, as delicately as possible. Keep things calm and slow. My wife has called it dancing around the issue, but I don't see it that way. My wife's approach is to address everything very head-on, very blunt and to the point. Sometimes I see the effectiveness of that approach, sometimes not. On Friday, Isabella came into the kitchen ready to head off to school. My wife takes one look at her and goes, "Your pants look like they're getting tight." Of course, Isabella read between the lines and asked my wife if she really wanted to get into it over her weight. My wife makes the weak claim that she never said, "wait." I stepped in, told my wife that she knew good and well what she was getting at with her original comment. This led to my wife to step into it and admit that, yeah, her comment was a comment on Isabella's weight. I told my wife that she's a really poor communicator and needs to work on the ways she brings up issues. She gets mad at me and asks what kind of a husband would bash his wife like that. Am I the jerk? So in this situation, I see OP as calling out what they see and just trying to be honest to their kid, which is probably the best way to be with your kids. I mean, if you want to foster a good relationship with your kids, you kind of have to have that honesty, right? Speedy Dweeby commented, "Not the jerk, and you aren't bashing if you give her constructive feedback. Wife is the jerk for commenting on daughter's weight in a passive-aggressive way too. However, there was probably a better time and place to tell your wife that her communication skills need working on, as telling her this in front of your daughter during an active conflict is also poor communication skills. I think there's something to be honored in both of your ways of approaching communication, especially when parenting, because calm and slow isn't always the best way, and bluntness is sometimes needed." Gab104 commented, "Normally I would agree that parents need to argue in private away from the children, but in this case, I think the daughter needed to hear dad stand up for her." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk turned away stranded house guest last minute? The teen is in high school boarding in our town, which is quite a long drive from their hometown. They don't have much, so they can't really afford hotels the 3 out of 4 times a term that mom is required at the school. Here's the kicker, the school calendar lines up with the craziest times at my job. Also, the mom was childhood friends with my husband first, so she reaches out to him, and he often says yes before consulting me properly. This time, I vetoed even though I knew the mom and daughter would be stranded. Like, I get that there's no money for a hotel, etc., but getting literal hours notice from my husband that I would be hosting just before the biggest meetings of the year at my company drove me up the literal wall. I didn't offer an explanation, apology, or pay for alternative accommodation. I just said no and moved on. So, am I the jerk? I imagine this is probably going to be pretty open and shut for most people that hear this story. The problem isn't that they turned them down last minute, it's that OP never even got a chance to do it in a timely fashion. Dubious people pleaser commented, "Your husband is the jerk. He put this on you on short notice and should have just said no. He opened the door to this ridiculousness in the first place. She knew about this schedule months in advance, so either she forgot to make preparations or your husband forgot. Either way, this is in no way on you, not the jerk. You should put down some boundaries with your husband as a precaution. Any guest must be ran by you with a minimum of X amount of notice. Certain times of year is an automatic no." Future Various 9495 commented, "Almost right, cause it sure is a husband problem and OP is not the jerk. But if they both work, and they are his friends, why should she be hosting? Why not, if he's so adamant they should stay, let him do all the cleaning, cooking, shopping, etc. Yes, they have to know earlier, but no, knowing earlier doesn't make OP responsible for the hosting. That could totally be up to the husband. And if OP feels the company of an extra adult and a teenager is too much, she can always decide to stay somewhere else, like a nice, good hotel. And that should be paid from the joint account. Let's just stop to assume that women are the only human beings being capable of hosting, or that all it takes is a bit more time to arrange it." Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend I'd cover for her and she could pay me back later? My girlfriend and I had no plans to see each other this weekend because she had work piled up. Saturday morning, she wrote that she did want to see me after all. Later in the evening, I checked on her. "How's work going? If you have a lot pending, I could come over so we get to spend a bit of time together." She let me know that she still had work, but even though it wouldn't do her any harm to go out, she was short on money and is getting paid until Monday. Here came the offending text. let me invite you out for drinks. Or if you want to go dining or do something more, I can cover for you and you can pay me later. Or I could come over so we don't spend. She told me, no, don't worry, let's just see each other next weekend. I was a little sad, but all good. Later at night, she wrote back, letting me know she was upset by my text and said, "Don't get me wrong, but you sounded very stingy." She explained she would understand if I'm short on money too, but she had no intention of taking advantage of me and I could handle things in a better way if I felt that way. I was taken aback because that was not my intention at all. She said it wasn't the first time. She brought up a recent trip. She had asked me to split the costs and let her know her part. I included the gas bill, which upset her too at that time. That too took me by surprise because we always split the gas bill for road trips. It hurt she called me cheap. I can think of recent dates where I've covered the bill. In the aforementioned road trip, I splurged in a nice gift and several surprises because she absolutely deserved it for her birthday. I have no intention of bringing any of this up to her. The last thing I want is to start an argument on money. It's my first relationship, so there's couples dynamics I'm still learning. I'm upset at myself because I could be a stingy idiot and I haven't realized it. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Edit, the road trip was to celebrate both of our birthdays, which are 1 week apart. We planned it together and we would split the costs, accommodation, food, etc., as we always do. She asked me to handle cost calculation. I apologize, I didn't elaborate on this. So ultimately, personally, I don't think OP is the jerk. I could see how some people would say, oh, this is a stingy thing to do. OP's counting the pennies here on things that are just something most people would just wave off or whatever. But at the same time, I think it's completely fair if OP wants to calculate it right down the middle. I mean, it was described as splitting it equally, right? Really, even both sides could potentially not be the jerk, and the real problem here is just expectations from both sides aren't clearly expressed. Now, the real problem would be if OP wants to sit down and talk about what actual cost expectations there should be, and all of a sudden they start getting defensive. Like, if they don't want to admit that they just kind of expect you to cover all the gas prices or whatever, that would definitely start being a red flag. Just me giving my 2 cents commented, have a money discussion, talk with her in an open table kind of way, tell her this is new. Tell her that you're both young and not set financially, and find out her expectations and convey your expectations. The anxious zebrafish commented, yeah, I agree. This just sounds like a miscommunication to me. It feels like she's explicitly saying one thing to be polite but implicitly saying something else, what she really wants, and he's not picking it up. I'm mostly looking at the birthday trip, which he said in the comments was for both of them since their birthdays are a week apart, since she asked for 50-50 and then was upset when things were 50-50, so it makes me wonder what things she's trying to tell him that he's not understanding because it's not being explicitly stated. A good, open, and honest conversation seems like the most logical next step. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not flying home twice in a month for mother-in-law's birthday and anniversary? My husband's mother passed away 3 years ago. She was diagnosed with cancer and unfortunately died within a year. Some background, we didn't have the best relationship as she was very traditional and would make very rude and offensive comments to me. My husband and I have the same qualifications and jobs, but I was still expected to do everything around the house, cook, etc., so we were never very close. Regardless, obviously I was there for her and my husband after her diagnosis. When we found out she was terminally ill, we were about to start our summer holidays. We're both teachers and live in another country, over 3 hours away from his home city by plane. We canceled all of our summer plans and flew back to spend 7 weeks with his parents, helping out as much as we could. When she passed away, we both got time off work to go back home again. My current issue is that my husband and his father don't think that I'm doing enough to honor her memory. The main issue is that her anniversary is coming up soon, which of course I'll fly over for and attend. However, it's also her birthday in the same month, and I'm expected to fly over again for a family meal. This means that in 1 month, I have to fly to another country twice from Friday evening to Sunday. I can't get any holiday time because of my profession. It's expensive as well as flights, we have to arrange a pet sitter, and exhausting as it's the most tiring time of year, and his home city is a 2-hour drive from the airport, so 10 hours of traveling in 1 weekend. I am more than happy for my husband to go back as often as he needs to. I've also suggested that we find a halfway point to meet, which has been shut down. I feel like I'm being guilted and I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable. I mean, realistically, it kind of sounds like OP would be doing this solely for their partner and not really so much for the mother-in-law. And like, I completely understand that the husband is probably dealing with quite a bit, but them being unable to understand how it's affecting OP and also the finances and your living situation as a whole, even when they are very clearly struggling with a lot, I think it's still unfair to their partner. I completely understand if the husband wants to, but really it is an unfair burden to try to expect and place on OP and, yeah, essentially guilt trip them. Dryad Dwinneth commented, "Not the jerk. Respectfully, she's not really yours to honor. You didn't get along, you didn't live in the same country, so I must wonder if you even knew each other very well. Your part in this is to support your husband, and it looks to me like you're doing that. If he wants to celebrate her birthday, he can. If he wants to commemorate her anniversary, he can. But even for a mother-son relationship, this is a lot. It's not something I would expect of you even if there was no travel involved, and it's certainly not something you should feel obligated to do. He can honor his mother however he wishes, but that's for him. You still get to choose for you. Repeated flights to a different country is not the end-all be-all of love and empathy." Ducky818 commented, "Not the jerk. What exactly does your husband expect you to do to honor his mother? Are you supposed to go for death anniversary and birthday this year? Every year? Set up a shrine at your home? Something more? My inclination would be to go for the anniversary this year as support for your husband. This is the first anniversary and it probably still stings a bit for him. After this year, I don't think a trip is necessary. The birthday celebration is a bit much and I don't think your attendance is required." Our next story is, "Am I the jerk for telling my wife her parents will die? I, 39-year-old male, and my wife, 36-year-old female, have been together for 14 years and have what I consider a great marriage. We very rarely have arguments and in general have a pretty good life. My wife had a pretty good middle-class childhood. No major issues other than the typical stuff you experience as you grow up. Her parents were loving and did the best they could for her and her brother. There are no buried secrets or hidden abuses. I don't believe either my wife or her brother ever even got spanked. Her parents are divorced but still on great terms with one another and with the family at large. They live about 1,200 miles away from us, so we don't see them as often as I would like. Her parents have always been there for us and on more than a few occasions have helped us financially when we needed it. Honestly, they're a somewhat boring Hallmark Channel family, and I cherish it. Shortly after getting married, my father passed away and my mother passed away about a year later. I was very close to both of them, and the loss was terrible. I often think about it every time I didn't pick up the phone to call them or would put off a visit because I'd do it next time. My wife is really terrible about being in contact with her family, but especially her parents. She just doesn't make an effort. I'll often ask her if she's spoken to anyone, and she just says, "I will later," and then never does. Sometimes weeks go by and she won't reach out to them at all. Her mother made a comment once that she knows everyone is busy, but she wished her children would reach out a little more. It drives me crazy that she just doesn't try. There is no reason. I could understand if they'd been bad parents or had done something to her, but that isn't the case. When I ask her why she won't do it, she says she doesn't need to. I told her a few weeks ago that I encourage her to speak to her parents because I miss mine terribly and I really regret every missed opportunity. I just don't want her to have the same regrets. She said she just doesn't feel that way and kinda moved on without saying much more. Her parents sent us some money to cover an unexpected medical bill and I thanked them, but told my wife she should really reach out and at least say thank you. She said she would later. I'm embarrassed to say that I got angry and I said, "You know, they'll be dead someday and there won't be a later." She began crying and told me that I was cruel and should have never have said something like that. I apologized to her profusely and again told her that I just have my own baggage from my parents and it gets to me sometimes. I told her I just want her to use the chances she has now. She told me she will never be able to forgive me and that she will always think about how cruel I was to her. I know I messed up, but I still don't understand why she can't just speak to her parents. Am I the jerk? This one has me a little bit conflicted because I do feel like maybe OP went a little too far, said a little too much, or kind of was a bit too harsh with what they said. That said, it really is coming from a very truthful place where OP found out the hard way how it feels to kind of feel like you didn't do enough. I feel like most people that have experienced loss, even in like a situation where you lost a pet, you can relate greatly to what OP is saying here. Like it even makes me relate to a dog that passed away several years back and just feeling like, you know, oh, I could have taken them on more walks, or I could have done even better to make sure that their health was better. OP's truthful, but I feel like they were a bit too harsh and blunt about it. I think there is a better way for OP to have explained how they're feeling and just try to explain you just don't want to have regrets, especially when it comes to having that relationship and that limited time with your parents. Mobile Following 198 commented, "Everybody sucks here. You shouldn't have said what you said, but her taking it to 'I'll never forgive you' levels is really extreme. Also, you know it already, but your baggage with your parents shouldn't impact your wife's relationships with her own. She can choose to be as close or not to them as she wants, and if she winds up having regrets, that's on her. Additionally, don't be so quick to jump and say her childhood was perfect. A lot of the worst abuses are hidden behind a perfectly crafted veneer. My dad was a raging alcoholic, and my mom emotionally, physically, and SA'd me. My dad died when I was younger and left me alone with my mom. Everyone thought and still thinks we had the perfect family. Could be something you don't know about that explains the distance with her parents. Or, yes, she could just be taking them for granted." Our next story is, "Would I be the jerk if I tell my friend I don't want to continue being roommates after our lease is up?" Me, 31-year-old female, and my friend, 32-year-old female, have been friends for years, and we've lived together on and off in the course of our friendship with no issues. The last 2 years, we've been living together after both of our abusive marriages ended. So like when we were looking for our place to live, she refused to walk through any of the properties with me. At one point, I thought she didn't want to move in with me at all, so I started looking at apartments for 1 bedroom and ended up signing the lease for a 1-bedroom apartment. Well, she still wanted to move in with me, so the apartment upgraded us to a 3-bedroom instead. Not a big deal, so I thought, but when we got here, she demanded the main bedroom and she hated everything about the apartment. When it came to the main bedroom, I refused. I told her outright that it wasn't fair for her to try to take the main bedroom when I wasn't even charging her a full half of the rent for the apartment. I pay $600 more, and I gave her the whole backside of the apartment because she has a child, and that child and her mother should have the rooms that are next to each other. She expected me to take the room next to her kid and share a bathroom with her kid instead of taking the room with its own bathroom, separated on the opposite side of the apartment. Now, that was early on, and we worked through those issues, although she still complains or makes snide comments to this day. Skipping forward, 6 months ago, she got a new dog. I love animals and she already had cats to begin with. I don't own any pets, so I tend to give them all a bunch of love. But now she's making snide comments about how I steal her animals from her. And it's so unnecessary and unprompted at times. Like she's been calling me the animal's second mommy for months, and now all of a sudden she's upset that the animals like to sleep with me, or play with me, or cuddle with me at all. I've also noticed the same jealousy in regards to how her child interacts with me too. I feel like I can't do anything right in my own home, and I've also noticed issues with her listening to my conversations on the phone. She'll bring up something I mentioned to my sister when I was on the phone with her randomly, as if she was part of the conversation and she wasn't. Will I be the jerk if I end our living arrangement when our lease is up? I get that she's a single mom and she struggles with money, but I can't live like this. I cannot live when I'm in constant secret competition with someone. I definitely think OP's not the jerk. I think it might end the friendship, but honestly, it doesn't really sound like there's too much of a friendship going on, at least anymore. Also, let's be real, OP's clearly so much better to all of her pets. If the pets are choosing to sleep in your room or with you or on your bed, clearly you're just doing something so much better than her. To be fair though, it would make me pretty jealous too. Old Gma 2023 commented, "Just let her know that you won't be renewing the lease. Tell the landlord that at renewal time, you want to rent a 1-bedroom. She's an adult and it's up to her and her mom to figure it out. Be prepared for solid guilt tripping and to lose the friendship. She's using you and not even thankful of your help. Does the landlord know about all the pets and new dog? You're liable for any damages the pets cause because you were on the lease." OP responded saying, "She said she informed them of the new dog, but I still don't see it on the online portal system. I don't think she did, and yeah, that kind of frustrates me. Her cats have already clawed up the door frames to heck and back. She says that all we have to do is sand them down and repaint when we move, but is she actually gonna do that, or is that something I'll have to pay for because, and I do mean this with all sensitivity, she can't afford to pay the apartment complex for the damages her animals have done?" Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my roommate to pay for her own food after she ate my meal prep? So I'm a 24-year-old female studying economics, and I've been living with my roommate Luna for about 6 months now. I've got this whole meal prep thing going on to save money and time, right? Well, last Sunday, I made these amazing chicken teriyaki bowls that were supposed to last me the week. But here's the drama. I come home to find out Luna has already eaten most of my meals. I was pretty upset, like I spent hours on that, so I told her she needs to start buying her own food or we should split the cost of groceries from now on. Luna got all defensive, saying she was hungry and thought it was okay since we're roommates. Now she's not talking to me, and I'm left wondering if I was too strict. Should I have just shared? Am I the jerk for setting boundaries about food? So, I feel like this kind of thing should be pretty clearly defined by now as far as what is expected as far as your food and their food. By the time you move in and you're living with that roommate, that kind of stuff should be nailed down, I feel like. That said, if you make something and you don't explicitly tell your roommate, hey, you can also have some, and it's not really a formalized thing to just share all the food, they shouldn't just assume that it's okay for them. You're not the jerk for either setting boundaries or expecting boundaries to be there over food you meal prepped for. National Pension 110 commented, not the jerk. She should have just apologized and pulled out her wallet or ordered you some Uber Eats. The fact that she's trying to make you uncomfortable shows the way she handles conflict. 1. Get defensive. 2. Silent treatment. 3. Awkwardness to make you uncomfortable. People who fight like this need to be called out on their bull. Don't touch my food. Hard stop. Our next story is, am I the jerk because I refuse to drive my coworkers home without compensation? I, 25-year-old male, have been offering and accepting requests from coworkers to give them a lift home whenever possible. I never asked for any compensation since it's only about a 15 to 20 minute detour, but about a month ago, I finally had the opportunity to buy a new car. Beforehand, I had a 1999 Ford Fiesta. It was my first car and I barely spent any money on gas. I don't have many financial responsibilities, so I chose to enjoy being a young man with a decent salary and bought a supercar. I love my new car, and so do my coworkers, which means a lot more requests have started coming my way for lifts home. I've worked at my current job for about 6 months and I've probably done over 100 detours to make my coworkers happy. Here's the problem, not once have I been offered any form of compensation from any of them, even though they would have had to pay for public transport if I didn't offer them a lift. Now, my new car is quite a bit more expensive than my old one, which means it doesn't drive that far, kilometers per liter, approximately 12 to 13. Apparently, this is completely otherworldly for my coworkers. Today, I said no for the first time. I got asked if I could give them a lift and I said, sure, if you pay me the fee you would have for public transport, I'll drive you home. And this did not sit well with them. I think I'm being fair as possible since I don't want to keep losing money by giving them a free service that they don't seem to appreciate. So, am I the jerk because I won't give free lifts to my coworkers anymore since it's becoming a financial burden on me? I don't think OP's the jerk here. Honestly, it's just not a sustainable thing to do. At least not a sustainable thing to do without getting some kind of gas money back. I would say it's almost just more OPs trying to defend themselves and prevent them from getting taken advantage of at this point. Without OP getting any kind of kickback from this, they're just kind of taking advantage of his goodwill and getting frustrated and upset when OP's not just giving in. Archetyping 101 commented, not the jerk, but I think it's how you said it that didn't sit well. It would have been okay if you said, hey, I should have mentioned this earlier, but after giving lifts out of the way for so long, I do need X amount of dollars because of the detour and gas. I'm sure you understand. I used to give lifts all the time, and they'd either pay for groceries, we'd shop after work, or they would buy me lunch or dinner. To have done this so many times and been offered absolutely nothing is bananas. Our next story is, am I the jerk for declining leftover food at my boyfriend's friend's barbecue after the group ate first right in front of us? Tell me your thoughts on if this was rude. I, 37-year-old female, met my now ex, 38-year-old male, ex's friends for the first time at a pre-drink/barbecue he invited me to join him on. They seemed nice enough, but prior to getting there, my ex said that his friend messaged and said the host feels bad because they're having a barbecue and there may not be enough food for everyone, so if we see food lying around after, to not feel bad that we weren't given food. I said this is fine, of course. I assumed he meant that they'd have already eaten and there would be evidence of said barbecue around. We get there and it's clear they haven't eaten yet. 8 people were invited of the 12 guests to eat, 4 of us were not. When it came to mealtime, the 8 of them sat around a nicely set table and chowed down, like filled their plates and ate up without making eye contact with us while we stood on the outside of the table chatting. I thought this was so weird. My ex did not, I guess? It was awkward because we were actually starving. When the meal was done, the host got up and said, "Guys, please help yourself," aka to the leftovers. I know people are all raised differently, but this struck me as so odd. My ex went and got some food on a plate and came up to me and said, "Come eat." And for some reason, I just couldn't get myself to do it. I don't even know these people, and it was so uncomfortable. I politely said, "No thank you," and carried on my conversation. Well, my ex was so bothered by this reaction from me, it ruined the whole evening for him. And we actually broke up after that. He broke up with me. He had originally said that we would just eat together at the street festival, so I was bothered that he put me in that position and then was mad at me for choosing not to eat and grabbing a snack on the street? Is this culturally normal behavior for some people? I live in Canada. I could never eat in front of a guest in my home and not feed them, but is this normal behavior for some? Was I rude or in the wrong for doing this? Or was he gaslighting me by being mad and making me feel like the rude person for declining food? So I gotta say this whole situation does seem extremely weird, and I would be very uncomfortable in that situation. Like, was it the circumstance where X amount of people got invited to this barbecue and all of a sudden it like morphed into something more and more people were invited? I mean, whatever the circumstance, the way it ended up was certainly weird. So OP being weirded out and having some weird behaviors is completely understandable, and I don't think OP's the jerk for what they did. Rocker Stubbs commented, "No, this is so weird. To specifically single out guests to only get leftovers while the first crew gets their pick? I don't know anyone who would do this. I would have been appalled and acted just the way you did. I'm good, I'll eat what I planned on eating. I don't need to pick through your leftover cold food." They all could have had a little less to be able to share with the 4 people not included, or asked you to bring a couple of burgers so you weren't left out, especially if you were going somewhere where they had food. Not the jerk. Sounds like you dodged a bullet with that guy. OP responded saying, "Right? There was so much food too, they filled their plates." I think the oddest part is we just shouldn't have been there. Like, should have come an hour later after they ate. He made me feel like I was being difficult, though I was very polite. He got mad at me because I had a couple of drinks after. Also was not offered any drinks by the host, and because I didn't eat, I got a buzz and he kept passive-aggressively saying, "Well, that's because you didn't eat anything." LOL, what? This next story is, am I the jerk because I pay for a maid to clean the house before I come home? I work out of town, and my wife stays home with our 2 teen kids. When I'm home, I take care of the housework to give my wife a break. The kids are supposed to help around the house in return for me paying for their phones and stuff. My wife chooses not to enforce that while I'm gone. Our income is split, thusly. We pay all our bills, including the kids' phones. We set aside money for retirement, vacations, emergencies, etc. What's left over is split evenly between her and I, so we each have money for fun stuff separately. For the last 8 months or so, she's made very little effort to keep the house clean while I'm gone, but she gets very upset if I just let it stay messy when I'm home. She says that the kids are too busy with extracurricular activities and their jobs to help, and that she gets overwhelmed. She does not work, but kids are in high school. I bought them a car and I pay for everything except fuel. They are responsible for getting themselves to extracurriculars and whatever else they want to do. I told her that it wasn't fair for me to have to clean up 4 weeks of mess on my 2 weeks off, that she should be forcing the kids to do their part. She says it's too hard. 2 shifts ago, I told the kids I was done paying for their phones and car bills. The car was paid for in cash, so there isn't a loan or anything, just insurance, registration, maintenance, that stuff. I took the money and I paid for a maid to come and clean up the day before I get home. That way, I can just maintain it until I leave. My wife is mad that the kids have to pay their own bills and that I'm cheating by paying someone else to do my chores. I'm not. I'm paying someone to do theirs. I found out that she's been giving the kids money out of her share to pay their bills. She's now mad that I have money for my hobbies, but she does not. I don't really care. She needs to do her part and clean up and parent. Am I the jerk? OP's not the jerk here, and I feel like this is heading for disaster real quick. I mean, it just sounds like your partner isn't wanting to hold up their half. They're not wanting to parent. They're not wanting to do the basic minimum necessities when they're not even working themselves. Like, what does she do all day if she doesn't work? TinyD71 commented, If you don't want to return to a messy home, that seems reasonable. If no one else is going to ensure that the home you return to isn't messy, it sounds like you found a workable solution. Assuming you gave your kids a heads up that their free ride was coming to an end, giving them an opportunity to step up their game, and they then didn't, your solution, to me, is creative and effective. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.